Navy pilot sees something that he can't identify doesn't mean that there isn't some other Department of Defense operation perhaps testing state-of-the-art technology, maybe even the Navy itself testing on its own pilots to see their response. My point is that just because some pilot can't identify a state-of-the-art craft doesn't mean that it's automatically extraterrestrial. Secondly, the UFO community gets very, very excited when there's a hint from the Department of Defense or from, whether it's an official press release or whether it's somebody who's meant to be in the know saying, well, we don't know what these devices are and it's, extraordinary. I'm not entirely sure why a community that hasn't trusted the US government since the 1950s all of a sudden trusts a spokesman for the US government or a supposed whistleblower who's in an intelligence agency or has a history of being in intelligence agencies when they say, well, we don't know what this stuff is and it might be extraterrestrial. Because if I was in the UFO community, tell me what I want to hear, wouldn't mean I would trust them automatically anyway. A lot of this stuff feels like a psyop to me. A lot of this stuff feels like it's maybe a test to see public reaction. Maybe it's a test to see Navy pilot reaction. I don't think just because I'm showing a grainy black and white video that the ETs are necessarily here or the US government is validating my beliefs that the ETs are here.
Right.
I don't know what your feelings are, but that's...
I haven't studied it enough, but I mean, do you think that that's possible though, that could be a UFO?
Well, it's a UFO. I mean, or now, well, that's that's the thing.
UFO. Mm-hmm. I mean, like from another dimension.
Oh, it's possible. Galaxy. It's possible. I mean, anything's possible. But it's interesting that you said, could it be a UFO?
Of course it's a UFO.
Well, here's the thing. When from flying saucers was the original term back in the 40s, early 50s. Mm-hmm. And then it went to UFOs, unidentified flying objects, because that sounded more scientific and somehow more legitimate. And now we have, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, because there's no proof they're necessarily flying or objects that might be something else. So it seems like every generation wants a more appropriate or a more official or less wacky sounding term. So you sound somehow more authoritative when you say UAPs as opposed to saying UFOs. Just like when people used to say UFOs for the first time, I don't know when it was in the 60s or something, you sounded more sane than when you said flying saucer. So there's all these weird semantic games happening now when the press throws around UAP instead, and official spokesman or unofficial spokesman say UAP instead of UFO. It all seems like a massive psyop. And when you have, I don't even know that fat British comedian talk show host. I don't know. He's one of those late night guys. And Obama was on not that long ago, and they asked him the question, and we know, what is there about ETs? And Obama did his usual shtick. Well, I asked, everybody when I first became, is there a hidden base or is there a hidden lab where they're dissecting alien bodies? No, there isn't. But all of these things, I tell you, there's things in the skies that we don't know what they are. It just feels like a psyop. I mean, it's just, I don't know what that video shows. Could it be extraterrestrial? Sure. Could it be an advanced state-of-the-art craft that we've developed? Sure. Could it be interdimensional? Right. Sure. Could it just be one big psyop and it's not even real? Sure. But everybody's so eager in the UFO community for disclosure. It's just around the corner. It's almost here.
What would be the big conspiracy? Why all of a sudden would the government want to be showing all that stuff?
Well, it could be as simple as it could be as simple as a wag the dog kind of scenario. Is that the term? Yeah. And there's a CIA historian, I think in the 1990s, he wrote a very interesting paper. And when I say a CIA historian, he was actually like an historian employed by the CIA. And he said, we knew what it was. So many of these sources were people misidentifying our craft, but we loved spinning it because it made sense to distract. We didn't want the Soviets to know what we were flying, or we didn't even want the public to know what was happening wherever. So you would spin the UFO story. And I think that's the same thing happening there. So that could be another point to ask, why would they do it? Maybe if you have state-of-the-art craft, the same way we know in Area 51, it's wonderful spin to say it might be extraterrestrial back-engineered craft, because then nobody takes it seriously, rather than to say that what people were seeing in Groom Lake flying over the Nevada desert back in the late 80s and 90s when this stuff first emerged, just say it's extraterrestrial and nobody will take you seriously. But if you say, oh, we know it's a secret base testing our own advanced aerial technology, then that's a problem. So just spin it. I would suggest, I'll let you say what you're going to in a minute. I'll just finish the train of thought. Another thing, similar thing is Richard. You just remember it.
No,
keep it
I
in.
forget
Is
it.
we've had Richard Doty on in the past, and so when Paul Benowitz, what was he, a business? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm ranting. Okay, in the 1980s, what was the Air Force base? I should know. It was an Air Force base in. Anyway, there was a businessman called Paul Benowitz who was in electronics, and he had his office across from the actual base, and he started to pick up strange transmissions coming from the base, and he thought he was picking up extraterrestrial transmissions. So he went to the base, as a good patriot that Benowitz was, and he said, I believe that I'm intercepting extraterrestrial communications from your base. Something weird is going on. What he had discovered was some state-of-the-art communication system. So the Air Force intelligence system went into a high-level spin, and an agent called Richard Doty, and this is quite an infamous story in the UFO community, approached Paul Benowitz and said, yes, you are interpreting, or you are receiving or picking up on extraterrestrial information. And then they spun the story. So Benowitz got so paranoid that he almost went nuts. Well, he did go nuts. I think he was put in an asylum. But instead of saying you're capturing real state-of-the-art communication technology that we're doing, it was much better to spin it as extraterrestrial. And I think that's pretty likely that what often happens. Now, that mightn't have anything to do with these videos, but my point is there's lots of reasons that you might suggest, which is what you were asking. Why might people say it's extraterrestrial? What's the point of doing a leak, or what's the point of pointing people in the direction that it might be ET? It's to cover your own technology. It's to distract the public. The broader, and then I will shut up, the broader thing is, there's a book which came out in the late 1960s, which is probably a hoax, but who knows, called Report from Iron Mountain. And it was this idea of a secret study group which suggested that war was a requirement for American society and American culture to keep going in the direction that it was, that peace was bad for us. So it was better to maintain a state of war, because there was war employed people and the military industrial complex employed people, and it was just good for the social structure to have war. And one of the things mentioned almost in passing in that was, well, maybe you could hoax an ET threat, and that might do the same thing as having an externalized enemy like the Soviet Union. If you thought the ETs were invading, it might also keep the war system, in high gear. Ronald Reagan, a very popular president of the United States, invaded by extraterrestrials. Would you come and help us? And Gorbachev said, of course we would. It would be an external threat. We would help you. The Soviet Union would help you. And Reagan said, we would help you too. So why can't we come to that kind of commonality without an extraterrestrial threat? If you look at the Watchmen comic book, not the movie, there's also a supervillain who achieves world peace by hoaxing an extraterrestrial invasion. There's also, ironically, an Outer Limits episode from back in the 60s which suggests the same thing. So to think that this hasn't been war gamed and thought about, what would happen if we would hoax an alien invasion or present it? They've clearly war gamed it and talked about it. I mean, it's the president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, has talked about it. So to think that everything is necessarily the truth when it's presented to us, I think is naive, particularly when you look at the history of the presentation of an alien threat when that might never have been there.
Right.
Yeah, that's my rant. So you had a thought.
Okay, so what about all the videos that are on YouTube where people are just randomly catching these little TikTok, whatever the heck you call them, little UFOs, like randomly come by? About all the experiences of people that see lights. Of course, I'm one that have seen them myself. So
it might.
So you're just, I'm just trying to understand why the government all of a sudden why they would bring that to light.
Well, that's the question, I guess. You're right. Why? I'm not doubting that people are experiencing things.
Well, I know, but I'm trying to understand the whole
That's
concept.
The question, isn't it? Why all of a sudden is there this big push that disclosure is about to be around the corner? I don't think disclosure is about to come.